Hi Booktube and welcome to a new video. This is 2 for Tag Tuesday. That's 2 different tags. The first is the tag about tags, which is an original tag video originated by Roz over at Scallydandling About the Books. She uploaded this Sunday and today we are Monday, which might feed into one of my answers. Prompts. 1. Tag first. Did you do the Booktube Newbie Tag? If not, what was your first tag? Do you choose to watch Newbie Tags? Well, I didn't do a Newbie Tag. As I've explained before, I sort of happened on Booktube after I'd already been uploading book review and book sort of theme discussion videos. So I sort of missed out on that Booktube Newbie Tag thing. If not, what was my first tag? It was a tag which is called the No Disclaimers tag by a booktuber who no longer posts, called Michael. And I didn't sort of understand, it was very early on in my Booktube career where I just sort of moved over my sort of individual videos over to Booktube. And I didn't really understand the rules. And I proceeded to record a 45-minute long video in response to the No Disclaimers tag. But I did talk about a lot of books in it. I'll post a link to it if you're interested. And do I choose to watch Newbie Tags? Well, I don't put in a search on YouTube for Booktube Newbie Tag, but if trusted booktubers I subscribe to, such as Roz, such as Brian at Bookish, such as Kelly at Books I'm Not Reading, if they do a shout out for a new booktuber, I will go and watch their video, and more often than not it is the newbie booktuber tag. So I don't choose to, but I will watch them. 2. Tag emotions. What feelings do tags provoke in you? Tag joy and delight, tag boredom and resentment, tag guilt or anxiety, even envy tag. Well, the anxiety I have about tags is a consciousness that I'm always holding up the same books, and it would be nice to talk about different books. But the trouble is, a lot of the books in my collection I read long before I came onto Booktube. And I probably couldn't talk sensibly about them because I probably couldn't remember enough detail to talk about them. So I do feel a bit of anxiety if I'm sort of churning over the same ground, and that can extend to non-book tag questions such as, well, no, actually this is a book related, but that, you know, can we do without the question, what is your favourite book to movie adaptation, which crops up probably in every 5 tags. And to me is a tedious question anyway, and I always give the same answer in order to cut off further elaboration. None. And yeah, I relish the challenge of tags, particularly ones that involve books rather than non-bookish stuff. And I have this thing in me, and I don't really know why or where it comes from, but if someone tags me specifically, I like to respond as soon as possible, ideally on the same day. It's only very recently that I've sort of tried to stick to the tags on Tuesday thing. I haven't, you know, in the first 2 or 3 years of my Booktube career I never bothered with Tag Tuesday, even though I did plenty of tags. I ought to say that I went back and counted, I've done 67 tag videos. This will be my 68th, though technically because there's 2 tags on this video, that'll be my 68th and 69th. So, yeah, I like to turn tag videos around really quickly. I don't like to have much thinking time. I like to try, I guess part of my liking to do that is that I get much more sort of spontaneous answers to the prompts rather than sort of thinking about them. As I say, so Roz posted this on Sunday. We are now Monday at 4:09 PM, so not a huge amount. Obviously this isn't going to be uploaded until tomorrow, Tuesday, but not a lot of thinking time. Oh yes, and the other emotion is, depending on the tag, sometimes you get tags that are sort of based on things that aren't really in my area of knowledge, such as, you know, where you get genre tags, or you get food related tags where often the questions are rather spurious links to certain food types and stuff. But you know, there was the Brandon Sanderson tag recently, and Brandon Sanderson is an author I've never even heard of, let alone read. That's because he works in the fantasy field. So Not necessarily that tag, but there are certain tags where I don't feel a natural affinity for them. So that tends to bring out the subversive and surreal side of the persona that I guess I project on Booktube. So there, I remember Steve Donahue did a 28 random questions tag. And one of the questions on that was, what is your dream profession? And I took the opportunity there to I think, illustrate kind of how my mind works. So my first answer to that was to be a professional darts player, which is sort of true. I don't, at the age of 57 now, I don't still see it as a dream, but you know, in the past it struck me as being a nice idea. And then I went on to a rather sort of flippant, sarcastic answer of saying being the fact checker for UrbanDictionary.com. And then I sort of elided smoothly over into some sort of quite heavy political critique, where I said I wanted to be the chief commissioner of the NFL, the National Football League in America, and how I would make certain demands of the team owners that pointed up their hypocrisy and their ignorance in the face of the Black Lives Matter protests that were being led by their players and which they were opposing. So I'd gone for sort of, you know, partial truth through sort of knockabout satire to quite heavy political satire, all in one prompt. And I kind of like to do that sort of freewheeling. Again, goes back to that idea of why I don't spend too much time turning these around. I like to go bang while the iron is hot. 3. What kind of tags do you like most and least to do and to watch? Well, my favourites are ones where you get to hold books up to camera. I particularly like scavenger hunt roulette type tags, such as "Do you have this book?" Because there you're not talking about the inside, the content of the book, because you've probably talked about, you know, those books to death. But they're sort of the scavenger hunt element is you have to find them in your collection where there might be a prompt such as find one with a clock on the front cover, or find one written by an author with the same initials as you, and you know, all these sorts of things. And there are 2 ways of approaching that. One is you do the scavenger hunt off camera and you just pile up all the books that answer the prompts. But I don't, you know, that's not the way I roll. I like to do a live scavenger hunt going through my shelves. It's a bit trickier now that half the shelves are in the shed and half are in this room that I'm recording. That does make it harder. But when they all used to be in the shed, I used to like sort of doing these scavenger hunt ones because, you know, it tested the powers of your memory, but also there's lots of details you don't notice, like, you know, having a clock on the front. Or another question was a book cover that has 3 faces on it. And that proves surprisingly tricky because, you know, even a book called 3 by Anne Quinn, it did have 3 faces on it, but they were all her face. So I felt I couldn't count that. I thought it had to be different faces. And it's not a detail that tends to stick in your memory unless it's a particularly, you know, memorable cover. So I was sort of live during the scavenger hunt, going through, pulling books off the shelf, going, oh, this might have 3 faces, and then, damn, it doesn't, it only has 1, or whatever. So I kind of like those. And there was a version related to that called the Backwards Bookcase Challenge by Dane Reeves, which I don't think was a tag, but I think either he weaponised it or I weaponised it into a tag, whereby one of my sons, and the only time he's ever appeared on camera, he went into my shared library and I asked him to turn around 10 books at random so that we could only see the pages, not the spines. So I didn't know what books they were. And I had to try and work out by their position and size and things what books they were. And the only instructions I gave him is if I've only got, because all my books by authors are filed together on the shelves, I said if there's only 2 books by the same author, don't turn one of those around because it'd be obvious. I can't remember what the other instruction was that I gave him. So I reckon before I started out, I thought I'd get 4 out of 10, and I think I got 5 in the end. But again, I'll post the link to that because that was a really good fun video to do. Other types of favourites. Well, the ones I'm not so keen on are ones about the sort of nitty-gritty of Booktube and things about production or even shelf tools to some extent. And the reason I don't like them is because I'm not terribly interested in the sort of production of Booktube videos. For me, it's all about the content of books and discussing books or themes and stuff like that. However, I do recognise that they can be really important for newbie booktubers or sort of people looking for tips on how to improve their channel. Not that I feel I have any tips I can offer for anyone to improve their channel, but I do understand the need for them. But myself, I don't feel particularly stimulated by them. But if someone tags me to do one, I'll do one, because I'll throw out my 2 cents on how I do it, and you know, maybe that's of value to somebody else. I don't know. 4, tag style. How do you tag? Do you have a system for keeping track of when you are tagged or tags you plan to do? Do you prepare to do tags or just wing it? Well, if someone tags me, the first thing I do is I cut and paste the prompts, which are from their notes below the video, and I stick it in a file on my desktop, because that reminds me that I've got to do it and what the prompts are. And as I said before, I didn't really stick to Tag Tuesday until quite recently, so I could turn these around quite quickly normally, and just sort of whack them up there. Now it's sort of a bit more important that they're just there on my desktop flashing at me, so I know I've got to do them in time for the completed video to be uploaded by Tuesday. But otherwise I wing it, you know. I don't really write down responses. I suppose inevitably there's some preparation if you have to, you know, pull the books off your shelf to answer the prompts. There is some non-winging it preparation there, and I think that probably probably answers that one. 5, tag memories. Of the tags you have watched, done or created, which are stuck in your memory? Are there any you would like to revisit or revive? Well, the first thing to say is recently Rainier of Rainier Reads revived one of my original tags from 2018 called The Last 10, which was very surprising. And I did consider going back and doing an updated version of it for, you know, for my own responses. But when I sort of went through the prompts, I actually thought there's not that much different from 2018, so I didn't do that. And in all, I've originated 5 tags. The last 10, I did the hip hop books tag, sorry, the literary quotation contrarian tag, which came out just around the time as we went into lockdown in March last year, so it rather lost its momentum really, because people had other things on their mind, not unreasonably. I did the hobbies and pastimes tag and the character traits tag, which is the first tag that I originated. And the only one I feel I would like to have a little more love, because most of, you know, I don't originate tag videos anymore. I haven't got the wherewithal really to do it. So these were all done quite a long time ago, and the only one that I really sort of have any affection for was the hip hop books tag, because each prompt was based around a hip hop sort of classic song, and I gave a little snatch of the song. Again, I'll post the link to that if anyone's interested. But none of these original tags got terribly much traffic, because as I say, I was fairly new booktuber, with the arrogance that I could create, you know, tags, and I didn't have that many subscribers, so they didn't really catch on. As to specific tags by other booktubers, I like Steve Donohue's Nosy Parker tags, where he asks you sort of a set amount of random questions that have very little to do with books. So, you know, 50 random questions, 28 more random questions, or whatever it is. So I do like doing those, although they are the ones I tend to subvert the most, because I do reveal some things about myself, and I guess I'm not revealing other things about myself. So I'm not taking all 28 questions, you know, head on. I think the ones I like the most that I've done are ones where I've been quite subversive. So there was one called Apocalypse tag, which is all about imaginary apocalypse, and you know, you can only take a few books with you, and each one was, you know, with reference to a specific prompt. And I had good fun with that, because, you know, apocalyptic and dystopian books are not my genre, and although the the tag was broad enough that you weren't forced down to only answer dystopian novels. I did sort of have quite a lot of fun with it. So yeah, that's it. So thanks very much to Roz. I will obviously leave the link to her origin video down below. And on to the next one. So this is the book addiction tag, which I first saw on To the Lit House's channel, and you should all be following her if you're not. I wasn't directly tagged. So question 1, what is the longest amount of time you can comfortably go without picking up a book? Well, I don't really have a set period where I start to get withdrawal symptoms, basically because if I'm in a writing jag, writing say a first draft, which can take me up to 2 months, I tend not to be reading anything because I don't want it sort of filtering into my own thought processes. And because I'm writing, that is the compensation emotionally for the fact that I'm not reading. But if it's a question of I haven't picked up a book but I'm not actually writing, that can get a bit more sort of sticky. But you know, if I go a few days without reading, it doesn't really bother me. But I'd say, you know, if I hadn't read a book in a week and there were no other contributing factors, then that would constitute a reading slump for me. But I think since I've been on Booktube, I haven't had a reading slump. So there you go. 2, how many books do you carry on your person, physical or device, at any one time? So when I used to do a regular commute to and from work, I only really read one book at a time, and therefore I'd only have one in my bag, unless I knew I was going to finish it on the journey in and wanted something to start on the journey back home, when I'd have 2. But occasionally, if I was reading some non-fiction in parallel with fiction because I was doing some research or something that I needed, then I would take 2 and then just decide once I got on the tube train which one I was going to pick up. But never really more than 2. 3, do you keep every book you buy receive, or are you happy to pass them on or to make space for more? Well, that's the key thing for me. It's all about space. I have limited bookshelves, and when they start filling up, then I have to unhaul, and at that point I have no problem about, you know, letting books go. Most of the books in my shed, although not all, if I gave them away or whatever, wouldn't pose me an emotional wrench. But because I still have storage space down there, I just haven't sort of moved in that direction. But there will come a time when what I tend to do when I'm unhauling is I give books to the Oxfam charity shop to sell. So obviously you haven't been able to sort of travel to these sorts of places over the last year. But that, you know, I imagine in the second half of 2021 I will be making another trip on the bus to Oxfam with another bunch of books for them to flog. 4, how long would you spend in a bookshop on a standard visit? Well, when I go to bookshops, I tend to go with specific titles in mind that I'm after. So not that long, but one occasion where it was a friend's party and it was about an hour and a half ahead of time because of various other things I've been doing that day. I'd arrived in the locale of the party but not the venue itself, and I hadn't got anything to read on me, so I'd gone to the local bookshop and browsed through. You know, if I am going to browse the fiction section, I will go from A through to Z, and I will look, you know, through every stack. Now admittedly I'm sure the eye sort of skates over some of the titles and you don't take them in, but so it can vary. As I say, I can be a quick in and out because I know what I want, or if I'm going to do a proper browse it can be a good hour. And the last time I did this actually is I had some book tokens up to the princely sum of £8, which is about $12, and I went through Waterstone's fiction section A to Z, and there wasn't a huge amount that stood out to me. And one of the books that did, I couldn't remember what it was called because I hadn't heard of it before. I just liked the blurb. Then I had to go back and look through the whole set of racks again to find it. I actually did it 3 times because I missed it the second time round and had to read the blurb again to find it out. So that took forever and a day. 5, how much time per day do you actually spend reading? No set amount. It could be half an hour, it could be 4 hours. It just, the main thing with me is I'm an insomniac, and it tends to how much energy I have to read before my eyes start feeling heavy. That tends to determine it. 6. Where does the task picking up a book appear on your to-do list? Well, I don't have a to-do list, so it doesn't. As I say, I don't beat myself up if I don't read a book during the day. 7. How many books do you reckon you own in total, include ebooks? Well, I reckon probably around 800 to 1,000, which before my mould outbreak would have been 1,200, but unfortunately I lost quite a few to my mould. 8. Approximately how often do you bring up books in conversation? Well, if it's conversation that's not related to Booktube, either comments on videos or Voxer chats, very, very rarely. Occasionally at work. 9. What is the biggest book page count you have finished reading? Well, it would have been the Encyclopedia of Women's Myths and Secrets, which is an encyclopedia, but I read every single entry. And that was 1,124 pages. Although I wonder if I got it here. No, I haven't got it. But the Infinite Jest, which I aim to finish this year, might just top that. 10. Is there a book you had to get your hands on against all odds? Search bookstore, online digging, stalked author, etc. There is, but I haven't got my hands on it. I've talked about this book before. It's the main frontman of the band Swans, Michael Gira, also used to write very, very short fiction in which he took out any extraneous word to leave just a sort of, it was about power relations of you, I, he, she and the verb, and very, very little extra adornment, and they were very, very effective. And I've got a couple in a sort of compilation book around sort of industrial music, because that's what Swans at the time were producing. And they reproduced a couple of his short stories. I thought, God, these are amazing. And his lyrics were very similar as well. This is back in the early 90s, maybe. So I saw that he had a book called The Consumer, a book of these collected short stories, but you couldn't get it in Britain. So somehow I found, I don't know if it was his address or his record company's address, and I sent $20. I happened to have a $20 bill from a previous stay in America. And I said, dear Michael, I can't get hold of your book anywhere in the UK. I know I shouldn't send cash through the post, but I hope this covers it. And never heard a thing. I thought, okay, well, it didn't get to him or someone's stolen it. And that's why you're told not to send cash through the mail. And then about 6 months later, I got one of those aerogram envelopes. I don't know if you remember, sort of par avion, and they sort of had red and blue chevrons around the perimeter of the envelope. And I opened it up, and it was empty. There's nothing inside it. I thought, that's odd. And then I noticed that he typed inside the chevron. So somehow he got it typed vertically down, then across, and then back up, which I still to this day don't know how he did that. And he typed, if you shouldn't, don't. And I, even though he'd had my $20, I felt, I didn't mind. I felt I deserved it. I felt chastened. And also that this uber god of music had bothered to reply to me. But I've still never got the Consumer. I have almost hit the purchase button on sort of Amazon Marketplace or eBay before realising that it's the German version, which wouldn't do me a lot of good. 11. Is there a book you struggle to finish because you refuse to DNF? Yeah, Dodge Rose by Jack Cox, Australian modernist. Oh, really didn't like that book, and I don't know why I battled on to it. It was around Christmas. It might have been just before Christmas or between Christmas and New Year, when you're trying to clear the decks and have a fresh start for the new year. And for some reason, I thought clearing the decks included getting to the end of this blasted book, but I really wish I hadn't. 12. What are 3 or some of your main book goals for 2021? Well, I don't normally set goals, but I have for 2021, which is the year of maximalist reading, where I built up on my shelves a lot of unread or partially read books of 600, 700 plus pages. And I tried to read 2 of them for the past 2 March of the Mammoths, not including this one, the 2 previous, and failed. Hadn't got very far with either of them, which was no reflection on the books. It just, I felt I was missing out reading other books at that time, because to commit to such a big book, if you start reading other books in parallel, then it just pushes the completion date of the big book further and further and further away. So I thought, this is ridiculous, I've got to overcome this block. So I am intending to read 10 books this year, one a month, excluding non-fiction November, because I'm going to mainly concentrate on non-fiction, and the month of July when my own new book comes out. So I'll have lots of calls on my time for that, hopefully. So I'm reading 10 big books this year, one a month, and so far in January and February I've completed them. I'll post links to the reviews of those books. March is March of the Mammoths, of course, and I'm doing a group read of The Recognitions with Noah at Everyone Who Reads Must Converse and Dennis at Intellectual Reads. And obviously we've only had week one of it, but the book invites strong debate, and that's exactly what we've been having on Box, and it's been terrific. So I feel quite bullish that I'll get through this. I think of all the books I'd lined up, other than possibly Infinite Jest, this is the one I was sort of most intimidated by. But actually, it being in a group read and it being very funny, I feel quite bullish that I'm going to get through this. I don't think I'm going to be reading. Well, I'm certainly not going to be reading anything in parallel with it. And since the book is the buddy read is scheduled to go throughout the month, I'm not sure how many other books I'm going to read in March at all. But you know, what will be on that one. 13. Have you ever had the privilege of converting someone into a reader by inspiration of your incessant nagging? By inspiration or your incessant nagging? Not that I know of. All I can say is I converted some people to reading my books, I suppose, which is obviously very pleasing. But I don't think I've ever converted someone from a non-reader to a reader. I don't think I've even had that sort of situation where I found myself being a proselytiser of reading. And of my own twin sons, one is a prodigious reader, one won't read at all. And he's the one doing the arts degree, go figure. And finally, 14. Describe what books mean to you in 5 words. Well, I'm only going to talk about fiction. Well, actually, all right, let's ascribe one of the 5 words to non-fiction, which is research. And of the fiction, I would say humanity, reality, and I'll come back to what I mean by that. Fiction, which sounds odd, but relates to reality. And language is the 4th word for that. And what I mean by reality and fiction, as 2 of my words, is I do not read books to escape into other worlds. I do not read books particularly to learn about the lives of other people in other periods or cultures. I mean, I read plenty of those types of books, but I'm not doing it in order to be educated or informed about different people's lives. Because to me, fiction is fiction, which sounds an obvious thing to say. There is absolutely no truth in fiction. It's all from the imagination of the writer. The only truth possible is the emotional response of the reader. And having said that, I don't want to escape in my reading, which I don't. The corollary of that is that therefore you read books that tell you about the world that are realistically based. But my point is they're not. They're artifice, they're fictional representations of what we take as reality. And my interest both as a reader and a writer is that fiction doesn't tell us about the world, other than it tells us about the fictions upon which the world is based. So all the assumptions and our understanding and our interpretation of our perception, a lot of these are, fictions in and of themselves. And if fiction could do anything, it might equip us better to recognise the fictions that surround us in everyday life, to recognise them as fictions and why they might be that way and how they work, and things like that. So that's why I have sort of reality and fiction as 2 words. So, for example, one of my favourite books of all time is David Markson's This Is Not a Novel. And it's a work that is purely about the art of fiction. And I love it for that. It's not trying to tell us anything about the world, but it is telling us about art and fiction. And it's probably my all-time favourite book. So thanks very much. I don't actually know who originated this tag, but I'm going to thank To The Lit House for bringing it to my attention. And there you have it. 2 tags for Tag Tuesday. Till next time.